Hello, mappers. Welcome to our next episode of How to Map Mod. In this episode, we get to actually add details and stuff. I'm not actually going to add that many details, but I'm going to show you, for the most part, how I would add those details. Let's get started without further ado. All right, the first thing that we want to do is actually open, now for reals, the tiled. Wow, I ran out of words there. The tiled program. Wow. All right, cool. Then we want to make sure that we're loading up the correct TMX full file. Now here, because of if you've been following our tutorial, you should have two TMX files, right? This one's going to be 00 and this one's 628. This 00 one, we actually don't need it. It's actually a copy from that old version. You can go ahead and move it somewhere else if you want, because you're like, all right, cool, I want to save it, prosperity, whatever, maybe I go back. But honestly, with that GIMP file, right, the GIMP file that you have, that's going to be your baseline. So this, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I don't need it. I don't want it crowding up my area. I don't want to accidentally edit and make changes into the wrong file. So I'm going to go ahead and go to 628 and open that up. This is now where we can go ahead and move things, and that's going to be here in the Layers tab. The Layers tab is going to start with however many layers by default. It doesn't matter. And this goes back to our conversation we had over in the tiled section. So let's talk a little bit about this program, and then we'll go ahead and get started. This program is very straightforward and simple, and it should sound similar to our building editor's tiled mode. In essence, these layers here are effectively here just so you can create different layers and put things on top of one another. The floor layer is going to be what affects the floor. That being said, these bump tools, right, BMP bump tools, these are going to be what the bump to TMX, right, is going to be using. If I do medium grass, that'll be able to replace the actual road. But if I go into, and that's what this does, these, you can select these. I can hit expand. This is usually the default view. So you can see what kind of tiles you're going to be working with. Right, dense grass, etc., dirt grass, light potholes, etc. The bump tools effectively will take precedence and will always be automatically placed on the floor layer. I should not have closed that. Great, it reopened. This stamp over here will effectively stamp brush, will put any type of tile that you select from the tile sets down here on the selected layer. For example, if I select the floor layer and I go to advertising, I can stamp this over and it'll be there. Now, this got placed in the floor layer, but as you can see here, this is kind of a mini preview overview of what is in that layer. Because the bump tool is present there, this stamp will be effectively not placed. However, I just want to show you that that is not exactly correct. If I delete this, it magically appears. The thing is that this tile, see how it's on the floor layer, that did get stamped into the floor layer, but this bump tool effectively takes precedence when dealing with the floor layer. Okay, so just be aware of that in terms of dealing with the floor layer. That can effectively mean that there's going to be like unnecessary junk there, so just be sure you delete things. And you try to avoid the floor layer, at least when it comes to, this like floor 0, as much as possible. And go and put dark asphalt back again. So how do you want to go ahead and do that? When you use the stamp tool, start at floor overlay, and then you can go ahead and place the items there. If you go to the layer above that, this will be placed, whatever you want on top of that layer, and so on and so forth. You can pick whatever you want and place it in that same square, and it'll just get placed above it. You can select the delete tool to delete. Notice here, this is again the selection. If we select overlay 2, it'll just delete the item on overlay 2. By hovering over the square, you can see a preview here on the left-hand side of all of the different tiles that are in those separate layers. If the tile is, let's say it's a small detail, is so small that it's very hard to see, you can see that if the color of the layer is grayed out, that means that there is no, that layer is not being used. If it is a dark color, that means that the layer is being used. That is important because let's just delete this real quick. Layer 3 and floor overlay 1. Because when I hover over small details like this, here you can see that floor overlay layer 2, there is something there, and that's going to be this little bit of grass here. It is not on floor overlay layer 1, it's on floor overlay layer 2. I can't delete it. We can get into that at a little later. Effectively, it's part of a bump tool because of blends. This bump prevent blending. You have to select the correct layer. If you select that, it'll delete the automatic blend. That's how you can get rid of a lot of these automatic blend things. Feel free to mess with that later as much as you want, but basically the blending on the different angles, right? Because this is automatic, if it's facing this direction, it'll be overlay 2, this direction, overlay 3, other direction will be overlay, and the other direction, overlay 4, right? The 4 cardinal directions. Anyway, so that's how this works. You simply pick a layer, and then you can go ahead and click the stamp tool, and then you can go ahead and select whatever you want here. So for example, if we were to type in the word street here, so we can go to like street decorations, that's when you can do things like adding mailboxes. However, notice that these things are on the vegetation layer. That's going to be underneath the brush. Up to you how you want to fix that. You can go ahead and add a new layer. If you do add a new layer, notice this naming convention, 0 underscore and then the name. This first part here, 0 underscore, this is telling the program what level you want this layer to be in. Level 0 is the bottommost level. Level 1 will be the next one over, all the way up to like level 7 or level 8. So be aware. If you do not add 0 underscore, it's going to mess things up. And if you want to go ahead and add 1, that's going to put it one level above that. 2 is 2, etc. Now, if I add tile level 7, that is technically a layer above vegetation. And when I place this, it'll be on top of that. So just be aware that even though things might be set in the vegetation layer automatically, that does not mean that you're beholden to be beneath it. You can always create another layer above, and by using the arrows, you can move those layers up and down as you wish. Now, if you want this to be 1, 2, 3, 4 vegetation, and then 6, you can go ahead and double click a layer to go ahead and rename it, whether it's 5 or 6 or whatever you want it to be. It doesn't matter. There, that follows the correct convention. Cool. So this is basically what you would do. You would add things like mailboxes, signposts, you can add stop signs. It doesn't really matter what you want to do. Just be aware that when you go ahead and add these, right, this is not like the ISO view. This is like the tile view. I cannot drag and rotate, right? This stop sign, I have to find the correct specific view or location in order to basically put that in. These tiles, however, are programmed so that they work even when you place them in this mode, in their specific ways. What do I mean? If I type something else like appliances, and I put a television floating in the sky there, or this one on the ground, when a player approaches this TV, this will work for all intents and purposes like a television. If I put the screen on top of it, well, it looks like it might be actually like this screen here. Now, if it's layer 6, right, it's going to replace it because it's the same layer. If I put it on something like vegetation, it's going to go away because it's a layer that's below it. So just be aware. If I go and just do floor overlay, let's do floor overlay 2 and do that. Then go floor overlay and then choose that television. That's how you can have the television with the screen, and this item should appear with the screen turned on, etc. Even though it might run out of power and it'll turn off, then that image will go away. But you can apply, if you put down a oven, that'll work like an oven, and so on and so forth. So that's the cool thing about this. Yeah, the other thing that I want to go ahead and show, because you can just click, find, have a good time. I trust your intelligence. The other thing is going to be about things like flag poles or these street lights and outside lights. Usually you're going to have one that is going to be the base pole here. These are going to be what the pole or the street light or whatever are going to be set upon. These, for example, just one level. These are 2. You are going to need to create a new tile layer. As I mentioned, that's going to be the level above. So I'm going to hit that number 1, and I'm actually going to call this floor. The naming convention doesn't matter. I just like doing it for the sake of consistency. Now, when I click on 1, everything gets grayed out because, again, it's focusing. If I hit H, it's focusing on the level that I'm working on. If I now select a lamppost and I focus so that it's matching up here, this is now going to be on top of that lamppost. If I hit H, it's going to look like this. If I select this one, again, see this is level 1 down here, that's going to match it up. Now, this is important to note because if I'm on layer 0, I can do something like this. I can place this down, and I've done this when I didn't know. Oh, this is on floor. So I put down on floor overlay. You have to make sure the correct layer is there. And by the way, because I accidentally did that, that does mean that a random pole is going to appear whenever I remove this. That might start causing glitches in your maps. So always be aware what layer you're working on and clean that stuff up. That way you end up avoiding glitches. Anyways, so in the floor overlay layer, I can place down this, and then I can go ahead and grab this lamp, and I can kind of finagle it so that it looks like it's on top of it, right? But if you zoom in close, you see how it's not. It's behind it. You see how the top of this pole here is right there? So in game, a player will walk here or drive past, and they'll be able to walk between these two. This pole will just seem to be stuck to the ground over here. Well, this one is just going to be a kind of headless pole there. And for all intents and purposes, this will work as a light, but it'll just look bad. So just be aware of how levels are being used and that you can use levels to do that. I believe that the other thing that works that way is it in decoration? I don't remember. The electricity poles? No, I don't remember where those are. Is it in radio? No, maybe computers. Anyway, in one of these is going to be the maybe communication. Yeah, so it's going to be these poles here. These poles are really cool to use. Do know that there are 3 levels to these, and sometimes you have to look at those small details when placing them. It took me a while. For example, I took these 2 that are next to each other, and then this one. And then if I scoot things over, then there's going to be these 2 poles that are here next to each other. So what's the difference between? The difference is the base. So if you put these next to each other, I believe that this is supposed to be so that this is technically facing in one direction and this is the other. Oh my goodness, instead of zooming out, I held shift, which shifted the whole screen over. So what ends up happening is you can see how these, if I try to line them up, they're actually slightly different. See how it's slightly different? So what ends up happening is this one is in a slightly different area than this one is. The effect is minor, but it is effectively because one of them is supposed to face forward and the other one is supposed to be face sideways, right? Whether it's diagonal or sideways. I believe that if I try to put this one here, see, facing forward, it lines up perfectly with that one. Over here, you notice how it's off just a little bit. So this one, it's off, but it lines up perfectly here. The diagonal ones, they fit perfectly here, but it's off. So just be aware that the differences might be minuscule, but they will matter. So there's a second pole here. This doesn't have the grime on the bottom, and neither does this one. Now, in essence, I can put this as the base pole, and when I go up to the first level, I'm going to hit H so that we know that we're focusing on the first level. See how this one doesn't line up? This one does. I can place that there, place this here, that there. Oh, that one's not the right one. That there. Weird. Looks like that one goes there. Anyways, it doesn't matter. So now these are all lined up and doing well. But what ends up happening, the reason why these don't quite match up, it's because this is supposed to be on the floor, This is supposed to be on top of these, for example, like this. And then on the level above that, if I create a new layer, call it 2, and I'm going to call it floor. This is just the name convention like following. When we select this, we can actually then build this pole. So that's kind of the main difference is, yeah, you can make them 2 high, but a lot of items, they might actually be 3 high, and we might not even be able to notice. So that's something that I wanted to point out in terms of a lot of these items. I can't delete these because it selected the floor layer. If I hit page up and page down, it'll automatically go to the bottommost layer. So just be sure that you go ahead and select that. If I hit H, now we can see that so notice that they are decapitated unless I hit H on floor level 0. So because it'll, just like buildings, it'll decapitate any layers that are above that. Then from here on the topmost layer, like let's say back on layer 2, that's, let me hit H to focus. That's when we can add things like these cables. They're a little hard to see. Here, let me go ahead and put it over here. These cables here, they sometimes don't quite line up because there is like a specific type of cable that goes with a specific type of post. And you'll need more layers in order to do that. If I add layer 2, then we can go ahead and draw those there. This one, this cable goes here, etc. And then this can go ahead and continue forward. I'm sure that there's another one that actually connects through, so that this one can actually connect past or something to that effect. I'm not sure how these work. I've used them like once, but you can effectively mess with them so that they all work and line up and yeah, and make sense. And you can have little poles. Great. I think that that's pretty much all that I really wanted to say about this H. About this, I have to have the right layer selected. This program, you can basically have fun with it and do whatever you will. Just know that when you add these details can be overwritten and disappear forever if you ever go back to the world editor and run bump to TMX. So before you start adding these types of details directly onto the tiled map, the TMX file, you want to be sure that you are 100% happy and done with your vegetation, with your roads, with everything. Now, the question that I had and the thing that I did was, can I, even though I drew this, change things by just using this and avoiding GIMP? Absolutely. If you select any type of tree, these tools will default to the vegetation layer only. And you can start doing things like deleting. You can select and hit the delete button to remove. You can add water. You can add whatever you want and make things different. However, because you're affecting one tile at a time with this brush tool, or you can paint over things, but then you're basically affecting whole swaths of the layer, or you're only working with squares with this tool, you might feel very limited when trying to change very large maps. Like if I wanted to create an island, it becomes really, really hard to do so, especially with blends and everything turned on. It'll be a lot easier to go back to your GIMP image, make the change that you want, edit things, whether it's in the vegetation layer or the regular base layer, and then reload this before we add hours and hours of these little details here. All right. With that being said, I wish you the best of luck in terms of creating your map. Feel free to, again, the stamp tool is going to help you add whatever you want. This is how you can add these advertisements here and all that good stuff. I believe in the advertisement one, right? One is going to face this way. I have to pick the right layer. One faces the other way. And then you can, of course, then just going up a level, stack them up. Stack them up correctly. And on the third level, then, of course, you find the one that has, you see how the very little detail that has the metal pole, the other ones don't. Then you can go ahead and do that. Cool. This is how you can, of course, create those advertisements that you can put by your roadsides. Later, then, of course, if you create a further layer on top of that, then you can layer these on top to create these advertisements. I believe that you might be able to select multiples by just clicking and dragging, but it doesn't always work. Just in one direction, but not the other. So be aware of that. Spiffo says hi. All right. Well, with that being said, I wish you the best of luck. Good luck map making. And we'll go ahead and go on to the next video so we can talk about zoning on your map. All right. Bye-bye.